Okay, everybody be quiet. Okay, we good? We good? We good?
Alright, can we start?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, today is November 8th, 2013, and we're at Cutter Morning Star, Miss Juicy's GT room. So, were you enlisted, or did you enlist, or were you drafted into the war?
Well, I really enlisted, but they give me a draft number. So there's a story behind that too, you know. I was in high school, graduated midterm in January, and 3 of us wanted to go enlist right away. So we went to, we wanted to be in the Marines. We went to Rapid City, South Dakota to enlist, and they said our car area is filled up, they couldn't take us. So we went back to, we said, well, let's go to the Navy. And the Navy told us the same thing. So they said, go to the draft board, we'll pick all the people out, you know, there'll be an officer from each organization when you go into service. So we told the draft board that we wanted to go. We was turning 18 and going to have to go probably in 6 months or so after school got out in June. But this was in January of '43. And so they signed us up and took us down. So we've got a draftee number. But we really, to get out of school, we took off and wanted to get into service. Our mentality then was to get in there, you know, get a rifle and go after Tojo and Hitler and get this war over with. But, you know, we was different at that time. You know, after they bombed Pearl Harbor in December 7th of 1941. And so this was up in, of course, this was not till '43, so we were still in school when that happened.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any special training?
The training I got, that was another example of the way the military does. They sent us down to classify us, and, well, what did you do, you know? Well, what has any high school kid done? We went up to North Dakota one summer and run the tractor on the combine and worked the wheat fields. And so right away they signed us the Armored Force. And so we went down to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and took 13 weeks of Armored Force training, driving M1, medium and light tanks. So that's, after I got out of there, then they signed me to a tank battalion at Fort Campbell. And it was Camp MaCall, there was no fort. And I was there and didn't care to be driving one of them tanks like that. I thought they was a death trap. I seen a paratrooper walk by, and I said, I think I'd rather be jumping out of an airplane than being in this tank. So I signed up for the Airborne.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Well, the normal thing, the medals, after I took the training and went over as a replacement to the 101st Airborne Division, I got there on the D-Day, the same day they jumped in Normandy, and when they come back from Normandy, they signed me out, and I ended up in the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, H Company. So then I got to jump in Holland. So the medals, of course, I got wounded there, so I got my first Purple Heart there in Holland. And of course the European ribbon, they give me credit for Normandy, but I never was in Normandy. But I got the 4 bronze stars for the Europe and across there, which they had 4 different campaigns, and also the arrowhead for jumping into Holland. In September they took us to Marshall area, and we suited us up, and we made that on the 17th of September of '44. We jumped into Holland. So then that's where I got wounded at, come back to England. By the time I get back, the unit had been pulled back to France. I joined them, and about 10 days later, they trucked us up to Bastogne for the Battle of Bulge. And the breakthrough started there.
Where and when were you born?
I was born 15 August of 1924. So,
What's your family details? Any brothers, sisters, mom, dad?
I had a brother. There were 6 of us in the family. I was in the middle. My older brother, he went up to the 8th grade, and then he went into the CCCs, the Conservation Corps, you know, that they had going at that time. My older sister in '41, and my brother, they got out of high school, and they ended up down in in Chicago and in Indiana. And then in 42, that's why I stayed there, and I got out of school early because my dad worked at the Homestead Gold Mine, which they closed it in 42 in Leeds, South Dakota. So, but I stayed with an aunt to finish high school, and that's why all of us tried to get out, because most of the people, their fathers had left, and so we just stayed, us people left in the high school, to get out, and so that's why we decided to enlist.
Which wars did you serve in?
Well, I served there in the 3 years that I had in after World War II. I had 3 years in. I come back and got discharged, and I was out for 15 days and re-enlisted. But my folks he'd come to Indiana and Gary, and that's where I joined my family. And there was no jobs to be done. All the factories were retooling from making war materials, and of course they wanted me to go to school, which would have been the right thing to do, but I didn't want to go. I just felt like it. I didn't care for school at that time. Didn't want to go back in, so I re-enlisted and went back in, and then I went back overseas to a unit that was left there at Frankfurt, Germany. That was Eisenhower's headquarters. And we stayed there then at the end of 46, and according to one of the Yalta Conference, we were supposed to be off, all shock-type troops were supposed to be off the continent of Europe by the end of the year. So by November, they started bringing us back, and then I would come back to the 82nd back at Fort Bragg. And I stayed there then for almost 5 years until the Korean War broke out in 1950.
Did you ever have to leave anybody behind?
Not just the ones that was dead, you know. I mean, we left, of course, they picked them up right away. I didn't have any first-hand experience of having to do that. In Bastogne, who was wounded there, other people was wounded, and some was killed, and so I wound up back in Bastogne and laid there while the division was surrounded.
Mm. Were you ever imprisoned or anything to that matter?
No, I wasn't, no.
Mm. So did you have any other family members, a dad or anything that served in the military?
Oh yeah, well, no, my dad was in that bracket where he didn't serve. He was born in 1897, and so he was about 16, I guess, at the time, but they didn't take him. He had 3 brothers older than him, and they were all in World War I. So then that made him about 45, better for World War II, and he was never drafted.
Mm. What was your ranking?
Well, I went in, I was when I was in the tank out battalion, they promoted me to a T5 as a driver. When I went to jump school, I was a T5. When I come back to join the unit that I joined in Camp MaCall, the colonel broke us all for non-prejudice, reduced us down to private. So I was a private when I went over. And then after the war, I ended up as a squad leader, and I was a staff sergeant and platoon sergeant when I got discharged.
Was it hard adapting to military life, such as being fit and food and?
No, not really. No. I was in pretty good shape when we went into service. I went to the Airborne, because I'd been on the football team there at the lead and track, so I was.
What did you do before you entered the service?
Well, as I say, that summer, well, I had a paper route in lead that I run all the time, and other than that, during the summers, I'll try to get a job somewhere. So I worked out in the construction 1 year, and even in the lead and zinc mine down in Deadwood. Until they took us out of there because we weren't supposed to be underage and underground. And then we ended up at the wheat fields of North Dakota. And then one summer I came to, I tried to come to where my brother was in Indiana and Maryville, and to get a job where he was working in a nut and bolt factory. But I got down there that summer and they wouldn't take me because I wasn't old enough. And so I went back, worked the rest of the summer with my grandfather down there, who worked for a construction company, building houses.
Alright, I think we're good. Alright, that's all the questions. What do I do?
Okay. Where were you when the war ended? Where were you? What?
Here, I'm gonna stop it.
Yeah.